On July the 15th, 2016, Turkey suffered yet another coup attempt. The country has a history of coups, with one almost every decade since the 1960s. But this time it was different. It was the public who helped stop the coup attempt. Young and old, religious or not, they took to the streets to make a stand. Since the failed coup, there have been many calls to reintroduce the death penalty to punish those responsible for killing around 250 people and injuring more than 2,000. President Erdogan said he will grant their wishes if approved by the parliament.
You asked for the death penalty, and it is the Turkish parliament that will decide on the death penalty. I hereby announce my decision that if the parliament makes such a move, I will approve it.
Turkey abolished the death penalty in 1999 in an effort to join the EU. More than 50 countries around the world execute certain criminals, including the US, Japan, and Russia. The European Union was quick to warn Turkey, saying yes to the death penalty will mean no to EU membership.
This is no excuse to take the country away from fundamental rights and rule of law. And we will be extremely vigilant on that for the sake not of the European Union or negotiations, but for the sake of Turkey itself.
Turkey is still bound by the European Convention on Human Rights, which bans capital punishment. But in this particular case, the president sees that as an interference in Turkey's domestic affairs.
I'm talking to the West. This country's faith isn't in your hands.
Joining the EU isn't the only obstacle. If Turkey reintroduces the death penalty, Parliament will have to change the constitution. The EU will not extradite any coup plotters to Turkey if the death penalty is in place in the country. It will be up to the Turkish parliament to decide whether it is in Turkey's best interest to bring back the death penalty. Christine Pirovolakis, The Newsmakers.
Well, joining me now in the studio are Yalem Eralp, a former ambassador who now works in Istanbul Culture University's Department of International Relations, and Selman Oğut, a law professor at Medipol University. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us.
You're welcome.
It's a fascinating debate at an interesting time in Turkey's history. Ambassador Eralp, if the people want it, why not?
Well, first of all, most civilized countries and most states in the United States have abolished capital punishment. But this government seems to be retrograde, moves back in all fields. This is not a legal problem. It is a political problem. And death penalty cannot be applied retroactively. So those who think that it can be applied to Öcalan are mistaken.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. There seems to be a fundamental contradiction here, Selman, in that people are angry. The coup plotters killed more than 250 people. The PKK kills civilians and so on and so forth. But you can't go back and try people with the death penalty. It might be for future coup plotters, for future terrorists. Isn't that contradictory?
Actually, the death penalty discussion in Turkey, I think, misunderstood, because not just the coup plotters, also some sensitive points are at stake in question. We don't talk about right now a retroactive legislation right now. We talk about the future. The people here in Turkey, they are afraid of seeing new coup plotters, and they just want to hinder this kind of new attempts. And this is just one side of the problem. The other side is some murders, just like the murder of Özgecan, or those are very famous cases in Turkey, or Irmak, the 4-year-old child raped and killed by a 15-year-old guy. So those kind of crimes are also touches the nerves of the people.
Well, what about Ambassador Eralp's point that, according to him, Turkey seems to be going backward when everybody else is abandoning it?
Oh, this is a very, I think it would be a very long conversation between us, because I don't believe that the developmentalism project is successful. Because when we take a look from the history of developmentalism, is the doctrine dividing the countries as developing countries and developed countries. But we see that this is just the basis of the intervening into the countries. And human rights are just one side of it, because we don't see that the United States is a participant of ICC, International Criminal Court, or the American Convention. Just to finish, I just want to say that civilization is also misunderstood. I don't think that when you talk about Gandhi, when they asked to Gandhi what you think about the Western civilization, he said that it can be a good idea.
Yeah, he said, I think it would be a good idea.
Let me say two things. Yes. First of all, introduction of death penalty does not decrease crime rate. It doesn't prevent. All the statistics around the world show that even where there is death penalty, crime rate is not decreasing. This is the first thing. Secondly, if Turkey introduces death penalty, Turkey is going to be kicked out of Europe, kicked out of the Council of Europe, whose headquarters is in Strasbourg, and relations with the EU will stop. And that is why I use the word retrograde.
Right. Salman, is that worth it, being kicked out of the EU project, or being kicked out of the possibility to join the EU?
Let me add
because
that
Brussels has said executing the death penalty is incompatible with membership in the COE.
Let me also add that even countries, Central Asian countries, whose democracy is worse than the Turkish democracy, have abolished death penalty.
So, Salman, is it worth it? Is it worth throwing away the possibility of joining Europe if the people want the death penalty for the parliament to approve of it?
Yeah, it's not my personal idea. According to the people in Turkey, they support this death penalty, but for some sensitive points, as I said, for the coup plotters or the rapers, some hard issues for people to accept. But when you take a look from the people's will in Turkey, if we say that democracy is the realization of the people's will, we say that death penalty can be offered to people with a referendum, with a plebiscite. But they say that it is against democracy. If democracy based on people's will, how can we say that just a tool of democracy is an obstacle? I can't understand.
So, Salman, if the people were asked death penalty or European Union, what do you think they'll choose
or
right
Europe.
now?
Not only European Union, Council of Europe in Strasbourg.
Sure. What do you think? Oh, let me ask Salman and I'll come to you, Ambassador.
If you add the words, if you introduce death penalty, dollar will be 4.5 liras.
There's an economic argument as well, but we don't know, right? We don't know, for sure. But Salman, what do you think? What do people value more right now in your analysis?
You know, there are some surveys about it. The Europe right now in Turkey, the reflection of the European thought in Turkey is just the hypocrisy, because Europe is the place wherein the terrorist groups can be protected, preserved. In Turkey, people think like this, because you see that Erdogan's teleconference was prohibited, was banned in Germany, but PKK supporters can easily do anything in Europe. This is a big problem.
The Turks are not very happy with the Europeans. Let me ask you, Yalamerov, as an ambassador.
Thing,
add it, and I'll ask you.
What if you ask the people, we don't believe in freedom of thought, and people said, we don't like freedom of thought?
But that's esoteric, isn't it?
Why
it's
not?
nice for us to talk over dinner, right? I don't think it will be a referendum, would it? I want to ask you about alternatives for Turkey, because President Erdogan has signaled possible Turkish joining of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Is that maybe a better bloc? China, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Russia,
joining non-democratic countries.
Uzbekistan, India, Pakistan, democratic
countries. They
are
are not members. They are observers.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
But would
maybe Erdogan likes to join.
But looking east, maybe, as a policy, rather than looking west.
You don't have to join the Shanghai group to look at the east. If you want to do trade, France does more trade with Asia than does Turkey. So it has nothing to do. The question is political. Genetically, I think this government is not democratic. That is the problem. Because whatever President Erdogan says, he despises universally accepted
values. But putting a question to a referendum
is
pure democracy, isn't it?
No, it is not. Referendum according to many people now in Europe, elsewhere, is one of the mechanisms which can destroy
So was the
democracy.
Brexit referendum undemocratic?
I think so. The British people
How
are now unhappy.
So it's not
Because
just Turkey, it's Britain as
you
well.
can use referendum
Right.
to do diverse things.
So what the British
And they-
people voted for the Brexit. So if you say that some of the British people are
Ambassador
unhappy,
Arab
okay,
says
well,
that was undemocratic. Let me ask you, Salman, very
I can
finally
say
about
that
the. I
there,
want to
there
ask
are
you
some
about the
articles
temperature.
about
Sure.
democratic coup, for example, America. Those are oxymorons. If
Okay.
you say that a plebiscite is undemocratic, if you say Brexit is undemocratic, it's just oxymoron.
Okay, fair enough. Finally, for you, Salman, the issue of the temperature. At the time in July, and with the protests after the failed coup, people were calling for the death penalty on the streets, at the rallies. But it's November now. Maybe the temperature's lower right now. Do you think it would be as high right now?
No, it's not
than
about
was
it.
back in
There's
July?
also a result of a survey, this statistic, a pure statistic. Just 35% of the people in Turkey are satisfied with the punishment. Especially, as I said, there are some very specific crimes like rape and sexual harassment or killing people intentionally or coup plotters. So this is not just about a new atmosphere in Turkey which occurred after the coup attempt.
The
People are
government
not,
now introduces a bill
Right.
to pardon rapists.
Well, that's one
no,
interpretation of it.
it's not in that way.
But
No.
that's another discussion
I know,
altogether.
but you
Sure.
see, there is total inconsistency.
It's just a specific group of people
Sure.
who are in jail right now. But I
Okay.
agree with the
Sure.
former ambassador about this point that the draft or the article is not well prepared.
Okay, hopefully I'll get you guys back on to discuss that, but
Yeah,
we're out of
discuss.
time.
Yeah.
Yalim Arab and Salman Oud, thank you very much for joining us. It's been a pleasure.
You're welcome.